in the form of an interview. So that why? I can read the question, right? And he can give the answer, and you're going to hear it. So that later on, if you go, what is it that Bruce said? You can have an audio record of that, and you can play it on your MP3 or right out of your computer. Does that sound fair? So what I ask you guys to do is take your cell phones and please put them on silent. I will tell you that the bathrooms are right back there on the right-hand side. I know that's very important for you. Of course, if you get up, you might not get your seat back at this point, right? And I'm going to have Bruce come up and get this thing started. For those of you that are standing out there, be patient, hang in there. We are recording it. So if you missed the first part of this, go back and watch it again, right? We're recording it for the full audio and video. So we don't want you guys to feel like you're getting left out. We are working to make sure that you guys don't get left out. Is that fair? And by the way, we go afterwards downstairs to the lounge, and we hang out, and we do some business, and we ask some questions. You stay a little bit tonight?
Sure.
Do you hear that? He's going to stay a little bit. So let him get downstairs before you, there's probably a fire hazard or something in here. So with that, Bruce, I appreciate you coming, and let's let him get started. You don't want to listen to me.
Much.
Yep.
How many of you are hearing me speak for the first time? Let me see. Okay. About 20%. I kept on seeing lowest interest rates in 50 years in a presentation done by Carr. And I thought, I wonder if that's accurate. And come to find out, the source they were using was only 50 years old. So Sean O'Toole and I went to Washington, D.C., and actually went into the Library of Congress for 3 days. Two nerds that like statistics went over from 1850 on, okay, to see loan programs and to see interest rates. Never in our lifetime have we had these interest rates. So this is unprecedented. And part of the conclusions that I'm drawing tonight is because of these unprecedented interest rates are creating unprecedented dominoes that are starting to fall. And so that's a real important element to keep in mind, that if that changes, so do the other dominoes. Okay, so that's an important part of this scenario and trying to figure out how long they'll be in place. When Sean and I were back there, we got into the Library of Congress. You go through security, as you can imagine, and then there's this librarian that's probably been there for 50 years. Okay, she looks like she was born there, and she looks pretty serious. And Sean and I were there, and we were waiting our turn, and we got our turn. And I was eyeing the back of, right behind her, there was this row of really old resource books, and I just thought, those are so cool. I said, can I take a look at one of those? And she said, you know, no one has ever asked me that. And she got one, and she handed it to me, and then Sean started asking her questions. Well, I'm a little bit of a practical joker, and I couldn't resist. So you know how, like, you want a telephone number, and you get a phone book, and if you take it out? So while she wasn't looking, I got my notebook out, and I had a piece of paper, and so she was talking to Sean, and all of a sudden, here's this big rip. And she turns real quickly, and I was holding this piece of paper, and she says, you know, I can call security. I said, okay, you win. For those of you that have not heard me, I'll just go over just a little bit of history so it might lend some credence to what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say, by the way, completely surprises me that I'm saying it at this point. What we're known for is looking ahead and saying in advance what's going to happen. So in 1995, had an interesting week. My son Aaron graduated from high school. I bought him a Honda Civic for $15,700, and 2 days later bought a house for $13,300. And that scared me because I was in that market in the late 80s where everything was great. There was real estate, and now it crashes and you can buy a 3-bedroom house for less money than a car. And so I did a lot of research to try and figure out how things work in California. And we happened to write a report called The California Comeback. And this was in January of 1997, why real estate prices will double in the next 8 years. And it was really trying to figure out the cycles in California. And then in 05 and 06, we wrote negative reports. The last one was the California crash. While foreclosures are going to go up thousands of percent and prices are going to crash, and why you might want to get your chips out of here. And what I'm about to share with you tonight We thought about a title. Honestly, I didn't want to take the energy that it took to write one during the holidays.
We'll bring Tony up front, too.
Are you taking over?
He's going to sit. I'm going to have him sit up here. Yes?
I have to trust him all night up here? Oh, that's not good.
Behind your back, too.
No, I know. This is pressure. You know what? I was saying something to Tony, actually, and I'll try to get back on track. But I think one of the best things I've done for this industry is get Tony Alvarez involved in it, honestly. When we first had that multi-millionaire maker, I got really the all-stars in the buying world to go and do a piece of it. Jack Fullerton was one of the pieces, and I picked each person because they did it because of a different ability. And I knew his ability was going to be pretty well accepted by the audience, so I actually had him speak last. And people were lining up at the end of it and hugging him and crying. And I knew that would happen. And I sure didn't want any speaker to have to follow that, so we made him last. But anyway, I'm glad he's part of it. So in '06, we write a very negative report. Now, what's difficult about writing projections is if it's any good, you're writing them when it's not true at the moment. What's the point if you're already there? So if you write a report in 2002 and say, things are really going to go up, well, thanks a lot, 4 years late. And if it's going to go down, you'd like to know in advance so you could get rid of your stuff, right? So an '08 report that says, hey, this is going to get really rough. Thanks a lot. So, but in the studies, what usually happens is the same every time. So when you have a comeback, a California comeback, like that document I wrote in '97, what typically happens is you have this sequence. You have construction improve, which improves the general employment, which drives migration back into California, which creates demand for real estate. And once those dominoes fall, off you go. Price increases gradually gain momentum, and they build momentum because we all get happy and euphoric about how good we are at real estate investing, and everything we touch turns to more and more money, and we throw caution out the window until we reach an affordability peak where the lenders say, I know you want it, but the answer is no. And last time we didn't do that. We didn't say no, which is why we had an extra of 30-40% upside, and which is why we gave it back so fast.
I need to interrupt you for just a second, Bruce. We do have the live stream going next door.
Okay.
And it actually has air conditioning next door. So whoever would like to stand up and go next door, that would be fine. You're seeing the same presentation. You're just not seeing him in person. So please, let's go ahead and exit now. Whoever is going to exit now, let's do it. So
I'm a little warm, but
Bruce
I can
continue on. I can't get the room any
I'm only kidding. No, that's
cooler
fine.
because of the amount of people in the room.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, this door here is
We could alternate
permanently locked.
breathing or
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm giving everybody the option. There's air conditioning next door with the live stream. Thank you, Ron.
Okay. And one of the things that was important about the information in all those reports is that all of the cycles had to have the same patterns, or it didn't make the cut. It didn't make my charts. And so all of a sudden, and this is an advantage of being in the business, we have a buy-sell business, and we normally have 50 properties that are in some phase of a buy-sell. So let's say it's usually a third are being fixed, a third are for sale, and a third are in escrow waiting to close, approximately. Well, what started to happen about 6 months ago is we started to lose the middle piece. We couldn't keep anything from pending. We literally would buy something, and Greg would put it in the MLS with this story in the comments. We are going to paint and do this and this, and before we ever got a chance to touch it, it would go pending for full price without the repairs. Then what started happening is we started getting multiple offers on as-is houses for more than it would possibly appraise for. So we added this comment in the MLS. The appraisal price will no longer reflect the sale price. In other words, you were the winning bidder. Congratulations. So whatever the appraisal is, don't call me. Yeah. You're going to add cash. And you know what? We had people say, okay. Now, this is for legitimate reasons. One of the things that appraisers, they've been under the gun. So how do you appraise a property for more than their comp says? Well, when you get 20 offers And we have a radio show, and one of the people that we had was a guy named Magziares, was the president of the Appraisal Institute. He said in that situation, every one of those offers is a comp because it's a statement of I will pay that market value. Why would they do that? Well, here's another piece of the appraisal rules is the idea of substitution. So, okay, it only appraises for 225. We have a buyer that's willing at 245, and you say, no, it's 225. Well, go replace it for 225 and let me know how you do. Oh, there's nothing for sale. That's why it went for 245. The second it closes, by the way, at 245, did they overpay? No, guess what? It's now a comp. This is what's starting to happen. Now, as a buy-sell company, I'm seeing this evidence happen in real time with no charts to support the event. Now I'm going, okay, well, wait a minute. How are we having price increases without construction, without improved unemployment, without migration positive? We have the wrong sequence. Now, we had it in 2010, but why? That was driven by $8,000 rebate checks. So you had a spike up in price. It was all driven by nonsense. This time, I'm thinking, well, it's nonsense. Well, low interest rate, it's all part of the picture. And that's what's neat. It's never one thing. But then I started going backwards and say, okay, why is this happening? And in fact, does it have legs? Or is it like a head fake? Because you don't want to make a business plan out of a head fake. So anyway, that's what we're going to cover tonight is the proof set that basically is going to show you what's about to happen but has yet to happen. And it's going to drive what my company does. We just made 500 offers today on building lots that exist, scattered building lots, that don't pencil. So we actually put in the mailer, this is what it costs to build, this is what it costs to get a permit. And when we add all that together and we say this is what your house is worth at the end of the day, in bright red letters it says you lose $7,000 for the privilege of building the house. And then it says basically, P.S., you might be tired of paying taxes and weed abatement bills on this dirt. So here's a $5,000 offer. We're basically overpaying for this lot. But here's what's going to happen in a heartbeat is that's going to pencil. And I would bet you within 24 months that land goes up 1,000% from our purchase price. That's why I'm interested in that piece. If you didn't know this was about to happen, you would make that decision because it's not happening yet. Okay, it's starting to happen, but it's about to happen very strongly, driven by unprecedented events. So this one doesn't have a history case. We can't go back and say, oh yeah, this is playing out the way it did before. And part of it is we've never had the circumstances that we've had before and the intervention that we've had before. Whoa. Sorry about that. I did that with the water before. This is actually just sort of sitting here. I'm innocent. Okay. The company, you can sort of see this, but anyway, we buy houses. We do hard money loans. We have lots of people's money that trust us, so we have about 45 plus maybe $50 million now involved in trust deeds. And what's neat about this whole unique scenario for California real estate is smart money is on both sides of a purchase of a rental and a trust deed that funds it, because those are two different people. And sometimes it's the same person. I have rental properties and I have trust deeds. I'm happy that I have both. I went on a vacation recently. There was a tornado that actually came down in Paris and took out about 100 feet of my fence. Now, I had to pay for that replacement of that because I owned the house. Had I had a trust deed on that property, would I got a call? No. So the trust deed pile that I have is very calm. Nothing happens to that pile, or if it does, I don't get a call. And so the person that has that 9% yield on the trust deed and the rentals that you guys own, that's why they want that, because it makes their life not crazy. And they're not built the way we are to own that and deal with, that's a really neat niche you've got there, loaning or renting to prisoners or ex-prisoners. I haven't heard that one before. That's pretty funny. Okay, so when we buy a property that cash flows, it makes sense for us to do. It makes sense for the person owning the trust deed. And we also have the education side of our business. And if you've been to a boot camp, it'll all change now because this is quadrant 4. Quadrant 4, where prices escalate and you are talking to human beings and you are aggressively expecting price appreciation, so you start doing things that take time to create because you get paid better and better the more length that happens. So that means construction. It means room additions. It means lot options. All of those things will be in a boot camp now because we're constructing a property. So we'll go through all the cost breakdown, taking pictures of it as we have went. We have done land. We've got a subdivision that we're creating, a small subdivision. We've got a lot that we purchased and we're building on. This is probably one of the most fascinating examples, and land is dangerous and very profitable. Okay. There was somebody paid $400,000 for this big parcel of dirt in Moreno Valley. And we had an escrow for $37,000 and did our due diligence, and at the end of that, passed. Okay, we were going to pay less than 1/10 of what they did and passed because they had missed the most important piece of evidence where you should have never bought the lot in the first place. And so that's what land can do for you. Okay, now you can touch it and it makes a lot of upside, potentially a profit. You touch it in the wrong manner, it can take all your money and say, amateur hour is not rewarded here. So anyway, that's part of the education. How many of you were at the Nixon Library event? Thank you for that, your support. That's a fun night. And for those of you who haven't been that's an event that we have on the panel, the presidents of different facets of the industry, the Appraisal Institute, Mortgage Bankers Association, and Sean O'Toole, and it goes on. And I get to do a Q&A session with those people. And these are the people that are in front of Congress, and they're actually lobbying. And guess what? Is it an important year to lobby? Yeah, the fiscal cliff is eyeing the low-hanging fruit called real estate. There's a lot of pieces that could get taken from real estate, and it's probably a good thing that it's well protected by people that don't want a lot of those things touched. Will some of them get touched? Yeah, it's inevitable. And they'll probably, see, if I were in charge of that decision, I would offer up a sacrificial piece, the one that's least damaging but shows good intent. If they don't do that, then they're going to take whatever they want, and it might be the wrong piece. So, I wish we would as a group, I wish we would be proactive on that. Our basic business is we have for many years taken this house, turned it into that house. This is a real transaction. This house sold for $456,000 toward the peak, and we bought it for a little less than that, $64,000. Put $35,000 in it. I kept it as a rental, and it sends $1,400 to me every month. The problem for California is across the street, somebody paid $450 and owes $450, and we don't know what to do with that person yet. And there's a lot of them. And so all of the things that you've seen over the last 4 or 5 years has been to try and figure out how do we resolve the guy across the street and up and down Riverside and San Bernardino County. Do we forgive the debt? Do we foreclose on them? And so you've seen all that play out, and it's become more and more interesting as time went by. The stuff that they have done, you would never have had this playbook and say this is how it's going to turn out. And part of what they've done, and it's become an obvious intent now, really lends to the price increases that are about to happen. By the way, this is how we fix our rentals. And that's kind of important. We had a chance to get interviewed by Nightline. And so they went through our houses for a few hours, and they came with one attitude toward investors and left with quite another one. They realized that, holy mackerel, when these guys touch something, it really improves. And that's exactly what I wanted them to understand. When your city has meetings about foreclosures, and we were invited because of the city's trust in Aaron and the Norris group, we were invited to be part of a foreclosure task force for the city of Riverside. So if it were a room full, it was everyone over there and then Bruce over here. Because everyone over here was, how can we stay longer, forgive the debt, and all this, and I'm going, you really don't want to do that, because here's the ramifications, the unintended consequences. But one of the things they're afraid of is, boy, don't let investors touch ownership of too much stuff, because our city just will go, and then they have to cope with somebody like us that fixes houses like this, and a lot of you guys in the room do the same thing. And all of a sudden you go, maybe this isn't such a bad deal. And that's important for them to understand that it's short-term inevitable that the percentage of owner-occupants are going to go down, and it's probably the homes are going to get fixed better than they ever were if the owner-occupant stayed in there over-encumbered. So I think it's going to turn out to be better. When I first started noticing games being played, and this is a progression, hopefully most of you, Tony, you can't see that, but it's okay. You already know this stuff. I know that. Okay. This is a progression of delinquencies, and this is a progression of trustee sales. And there's a ratio that's normally valid. You have this produce, okay, this is a 90-day late is how it makes this brown chart. And when you're 90 days late, somebody files a notice of default usually, and 2 quarters later it goes to trustee sale. So there's a ratio, and I'm going to start with the tallest trustee sale. This 1.2 should have come from this 4.2. So mathematical ratio would be 4.2 is to 1.2 as 11.3 is to 0.8. Now, somewhere along the line, this got painful. Now, I don't know if you remember how much fun it was to buy in '08, but we actually bought most of our rentals right in there, and it was because the prices were absolutely nuts. Most of what I have bought has already tripled in price because we bought it when no one wanted anything. We had 18 months of inventory, and it was like shooting fish in the barrel. It really was. And so now, think about that. You have, in San Bernardino, you had 24 months of inventory, and it came from this delinquency. Had they foreclosed on everything at the same pace? Up here, this is nearly a triple. You would have had 65 months of inventory in San Bernardino. 5 years. You'd have been buying houses for 10 grand. And guess when lenders start losing 250 grand on a 300 grand loan, which was the ratio when we were in '08, late in '08, they were losing that much. They decided, this hurts too much every time, so maybe we'll have a different plan. And fortunately, the Fed went along with it, and that was not normal. The last time the lenders were told to foreclose, this time they were told, nah, that's a good plan, just wait. So this is the chart that should have happened in foreclosures. And so you've heard that term for a long time, shadow inventory. Shadow inventory changes definitions, every 6 months, but my version of it is not what the lenders own, but what they refuse to foreclose on that's churning in the background, that's 90 days late or 2 years late. What are you going to do with that pile, okay? And up until recently, I felt, well, eventually that's going to hit pay dirt and be an REO. Well, one of the radio shows, and by the way, it's an important thing to listen to because we really try to search out people that are very pertinent in our industry. How many of you guys listen to the radio show? Okay. We have 3 of the top REO agents in Riverside County on the radio show. And so these are the guys, one of them's in the top 5 in the country. So it's really good to get feedback from some of these people. What are you being told? You're being told to staff up because after the election, after the first of the year, all this stuff's coming about? No. He's basically told, go fold your tent with your large staff because that's not how this is going to play out anymore. So somebody that had 800 listings now gets 2 assignments a week. 99% down. The other, Steve Silva, completely out of the listing business into what we do, buy, sell. Lance Martin shifted most of his business went from REOs to short sales. So the idea that they're going to foreclose on all this stuff eventually, well, it doesn't look like that. And so that's been a really big game changer when they made that decision. So the games began in 2008. They never stopped. The foreclosures that peaked, the trustee sales that peaked have just continually gone down, become less and less of a percentage in the MLS. And so that's what started to happen. This chart shows that the REOs, the actual bank-owned properties, down 34%. Leslie Appleton-Young, I just saw her today. The latest chart, how could that be a later chart? October 12th? Okay, she has November, it's minus 50%. So the REO inventory, if we thought of the shadow inventory as the bank owns all this stuff and they're not putting it out, it's down by 50%. So that's not where shadow inventory is. And then this is the inventory that's for sale. And this is everything that's for sale. So it's short sales, REOs, privately. And this is for the MLS. It's called Inland Valley Region, which is a combination of San Bernardino, Riverside, LA, and Orange County. And this is 18,000 properties, and this was in July, and I need to update that, but it was 7,000 here. And that trajectory was gaining speed. So you end up with a chart like this in Riverside. You normally deal with 5.5 months of inventory, let's say, or maybe even more, 7 months. And now you got about a month and a half, and now you probably have a month. So I started thinking, okay, how do you go from a month of inventory to 5 months of inventory? How do you get 5 times as much inventory back in the MLS? And so that's part of what tonight's about, is figuring out where's that stuff going to come from. And if it doesn't come, what happens? Okay, so this chart was interesting. Now, I'm going to go to this first, then back. What's interesting about what we did, we overdid debt in a big way. When we let everybody get a property that could fog a mirror, we ran up about $11 trillion of debt on an appraisal that could only be substantiated in that euphoric mindset. And then all of a sudden, in record time, we got down to 245. The problem is we still had this chart of debt. So your price went down by something like 55%, but your debt barely ticked. And matter of fact, most of this improvement from 11 to 10 trillion has been debt that's been paid off due to foreclosure and huge losses. So one of the things that you have to try and figure out would be, let's say that when we had our price at 245, we were mimicking a year 2000. The last time we were there, we only owed $4 trillion on the value of real estate. Now we have $11 trillion. That's a problem. So you solve this by forgiving all of this debt, or you solve it by getting prices to go up until this isn't so painful. So we're now at 340,000. We're mimicking 2002 and a half, and we can support about $6 trillion of debt where we currently are. And if you get this to go up 25% more, you solve 80% or more of our problem. So everything that you're seeing being done makes this debt bearable and more comfortable. Okay? So if that's your game plan, how do you do it? First of all, let's make payments ridiculously low. So if you're in an Inland Empire and you go from owner or from renter to owner in Inland Empire, you save $6,850 a year. Now, I've had people say, well, people have bad experience. They just lost their property. Okay, but I'm just a practical guy. So this is, if I was in that situation, I might sit there and my wife might say to me, well, Bruce, last time we owned a house, we lost money. That was 3 years ago. I say, yeah, I know, but we're renting for $1,200, and if we buy, we pay $7. Oh, okay, well, that'd be better, because you know that new car you want? We can get it if we go to ownership. Now, well, most of us would make that decision, okay? As a matter of fact, don't we most of the time make that decision if it's straight across? Wouldn't we rather own than rent if the payment was the same? Okay? Bill? Where's Bill Tan? Oh, I need him. Put him to his test, man. Because it's very, I just need your help. How much at 3.25% interest? Okay, I want to be able to absorb a $550 payment at 3.25% interest. I want to know what the balance is. Yes, it was, but I want you to do it live so we feel comfortable with the answer. 3.25%. And you're going to have a payment burden of $6,850 a year. $6,850, $6,850, or $550 a month, or whatever you want to do. Okay, I'll believe you. Yeah. Okay. we have a real hard time thinking that you could have a $130,000 price movement in an area like Lancaster, San Bernardino, Riverside, Moreno Valley, because that's unprecedented. What's not unprecedented is the willingness to own a home at a payment that's equal to rent. And we have to take what we know can't happen in percentage of gain in a yearly price and realize that if there's enough people that want to go there, this price will race to that number. And the people that own stuff are going to have a very big smile on their face. And it's not going to take all that long to happen because of what's for sale. If you have a month's worth of inventory and if you have enough buyers, you're going to have price increases. And I can tell you that some of these are not small. Some of these are 20% price movements inside of 40 days. We are now very happy when we have an escrow fall out. You're getting rewarded for that. I mean, this feels a little like '04. So this is true in LA County. Whatever county it is, you have the payment be the smallest ratio to income ever, and the rents are closest to it than ever. So this is a significant thing. Other investments are volatile with virtually zero return. So that's why you have Wall Street interested in real estate and rental houses. What are they going to do with their money? Put it in a 10-year T-bill? What is it paying today? 1.61%? How about the stock market? Well, Greece hiccups and you go down 300 points. Something happens and that doesn't feel very good. I've got gray hair. If I had a whole group of people that were my age and I opened a talk saying, I have a very exciting volatile investment for you. And that's where almost everybody's money is in the stuff they have no control of what happens to their principal. And so real estate is very attractive because, okay, you get a monthly cash flow, and in a lot of places it's below replacement cost. And that's unprecedented to get to say, too. There's a lot of things that we've not been able to get to say. There's never been a time where you could have a price increase mean so little monthly. So when you get an offer that's 25 grand more than it'll appraise for, well, what does that translate to a monthly cost? It's peanuts. Now, here's a good example of what happened to someone that works for the company. They bought a house for $205,000 in February of this year. In October of this year, so that's 8 months later, they refied. House appraised for $285,000. An 80 grand hike on a 205 investment is about 37% or something. Okay? They refied it and got rid of their PMI because now they had equity beyond 20%. Payment went down. They bought a car, and the car payment and the new house payment did not equal the original house payment that they qualified for, and they have a big pile of equity. Now, do you think that woman is going to be quiet about that? No, her whole little circle of friends who are renters are now going, whoa. And that's what starts to happen, is the mood swing starts to happen. You're going to start to see everything real estate have a positive twist to it, and it'll start driving that same reaction that the market allows it to take off. And again, you gradually reduce inventory for sale. So this is the MLS inventory. And if you look at this, somebody's head just sneaks in there. The only times we got to this inventory level was in an interesting year called 1988, 2004, and we're approaching that again. Those were volatile years for price increase because there was just too much demand and not enough stuff for sale. Now, most of those happened at the end of the boom cycle, and here we're barely feeling like we're getting one going. This is not the normal cycle. It really is not. Solving this again from the bottom up, trying to get prices up, how about you introduce billion-dollar buyers into the marketplace? How many people realize that a lot of buyers are here with $1 billion to write a check for anything that moves, real estate? They're at trustee sales. They're in the MLS. There was Mike Novak-Smith told me of an offer that he got. And how you compete with this? You're an FHA buyer. You offer full price. And on the first 24-hour period of a property being available, he had 94 offers. But the winning bidder was a company that had a proof of available funds for $194 million for a 200 grand purchase. I guess that's going to close. What do you think? And so that's the competition. And so these guys are out buying a bunch of stuff. How about instead of foreclosing, you sell the loans in bulk? So FHA's got all these people that we sort of thought, well, that's where the big push is going to be for the shadow inventory. They got 750,000 people that are 90 days late, and they've been 90 days, or more than 90 days late, and a lot of them been over 2 years. So when we foreclose on that, that's the shadow inventory we're concerned about. And all of a sudden, you find that they're going to start selling the notes in bulk. And attached to the note purchase is an assignment. Do not foreclose on this person. Go renegotiate the loan. So those properties are not showing up in the MLS. Okay? As a matter of fact, this big company that's buying at trustee sale, when we buy at trustee sale, we fix and resell them. What do they do with them? They buy and hold. So all that inventory that used to come and recycle for sale, not showing up. They're buying a very big percentage of it. Okay? So all this FHA, Andrea Jennings, where are you? Andrea, she and I used to go to HUD auctions, and we would have a lot of fun. And I'd be buying properties at about 50% of value, and I was really looking forward to that happening again. Not going to happen. You can buy the notes probably for a big discount, but that's what they're going to do. They started out with 9,000 notes. Last time I saw a number, it was 4 times that, and they're going to clip those out until they're done. Okay? How about selling existing homes in bulk? So we've all heard Fannie Mae selling some properties, and I just read an article, they thought that went really well. And guess what the big discount was for somebody that bought them in bulk? It wasn't a discount. It was retail plus. Why? Because there's nothing else for sale. So if you want to buy 500 houses, if there's 10 other guys with a bunch of money, and you want them bad enough, you ain't going to get a discount, and they know this. Now, wasn't that more efficient, by the way? If you're Fannie Mae, could I sell 500 houses in one shot? At full price? You got to be kidding me. Okay, let's do that. So that started to happen. And instead of foreclosing, let's take a deed in lieu of foreclosure and rent back. So that's starting to happen, and not in big quantity, but you get the indication that if you're in foreclosure, you have been very smart to be patient because we're rolling out the red carpet. Anything we can do to help you, boy, we'll do it. What about the builders? This is I love these articles. Okay, this is Riverside new home construction. This is the first quarter sales, 17 units. And then there's a big article, building is up 40%. How many houses is that? It's like 6.8 houses. Like, oh boy, that'll fix everything. So you could go up 300% and you wouldn't get to that chart, not even close. So I think, okay, how do you really tell if a builder's confident about the future? Well, look at subdivisions, because that's the future, right? If they really think, yeah, this is going to come back, then there'll be subdivision creation. Well, there's your subdivision creation. So this is Riverside's normal pace, or maybe even an abnormal pace at the end, but 300 is not an abnormal number, and now we're creating an average of about, give it 18. The problem with not doing subdivisions early is that there's going to be a lag. So why I'm interested in existing building lots is because they're going to find within a year that, holy mackerel, we should have been, and of course they don't pencil, so it's really hard to get investors to put up money and say, trust me, this is going to be here. I'll show you how big of a discount. We're negotiating right now to buy 151 building lots that already exist. So Rosamond, we did before. This time we're trying to do this. Our offer is $3 million, and the company that did all the work has $20 million in the work. And we're talking about them selling it, and it's one of the bigger builders. They're looking at where they are, and I'm looking at where they're going to be. Now, they did the opposite. So when I spoke in front of the builders in 2006 and said, you know what, if I were you, I would sell every piece of land, every parcel that you have, every house you have, and buy it back for nothing later, they thought it was a good idea to spend $20 million on that dirt right then. So what I'm telling you is not happened yet. And they don't think it's going to happen, or this would be a very different chart. By the time they get it, though, they're going to be way behind the curve. You want to create a set of building lots? We have, and that's part of what we'll look at in a boot camp, is look at the documentation and all of the stuff that you have to go through to create a subdivision. You're looking at 2 or 3 years and buku bucks. And so when they try to catch up, there's going to be this big hole of, wow, we'd like to build new homes, but there's nothing big to build on. And so scattered building will be one of the niches that we should do as investors. Now, this is changing now. Now we'll go from, let's solve it from the top down. So now all of a sudden they're being very aggressive. So if you've had the experience of, wow, they just won't listen, they won't do any adjusting, well, to provide relief more quickly, Chase executives are addressing the borrower fatigue with a letter sent to borrowers notifying them that their loan was refinanced into a new mortgage with a lower interest rate. No documentation needed. You didn't even need to fill out a thing. They sent you a letter and said, please open it so you'll send the payment in correctly because it's a lot lower now. Okay? Now, getting a principal reduction is much harder. Chase is sending different letters to other underwater borrowers. All that's required in order for a principal reduction on their loan is a signature sent back with a self-addressed stamped envelope the bank provides. So that's the principal reduction. You know what? That didn't work very well. B of A sent out 150,000 of those, and they got 7% response, something like that. So they sent another mailer out to the same people and said, by default, if we don't hear from you in 30 days, you have your principal reduction. So people, 150,000 people got their entire credit line forgiven to zero. And I bet 80% of them don't even know it.
Where do you sign up?
Where do you sign up? That's what I thought. Wow, I need to write a check on my credit line, and you know what? You're not eligible unless you're behind on your first.
Well, I could do that.
Yeah, see, I would like. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll just take half of the benefit, and in arrears, I'll go get a loan, and I'll not make a payment, and then you give me half of the benefit. Won't that work?
I like it.
Yeah. Well, you know, we seem to benefit the wrong group, right? Okay. So what we're starting to do is we're forgiving debt. We're doing short sales. Now, this is an interesting thing. Pay the former owner money to approve a short sale. There's an example in Marina Valley that just sort of cracks me up. One of the very experienced buyers that we deal with bought a house, 2-bedroom house. I think the number was $57,000 that he bought it for. Loan was probably in excess of $200,000. They paid the occupant owner $25,000 to approve the short sale. And with commission and stuff, the lender netted less than the $25,000 out of their $200+ loan. Now, if they were current on their payment, here's a good question. Is that buyer capable of rebuying a home right now? The answer is yes. We said, well, he doesn't have any money. Oh, yeah, he does. We just gave him $25,000. And he can buy the next door house because the appraisal was $105,000. So he can go from being over encumbered and no money to $25,000 and buy a house for half of his loan balance. That's pretty slick. So you know what? That's going to create some demand. And if you've had it modified once, well, guess what? That wasn't good enough. Let's try it again. The REOs on this chart, as of whatever date this was, is now changed to 12% of the inventory. This is now 63%. So these are swapping places, and this is growing as well. So as an investor, you know, we're probably looking at, we're still buying short sales, but the bigger percentage that this gets, the more and more the private market will tell you what the next price is. And that's always been an aggressive number because people start asking for numbers they can't get in advance, and if they're the only thing for sale, they start getting it, okay? We already talked about that concept. And this is the question, buyers in short supply are everywhere you look, because this was the last piece of the puzzle. Maybe this has been driven by investors and Wall Street and all that. So does this have legs? And then I started looking back at a foreclosure chart, and I realized that the math is pretty amazing. In 2008 and 9 in Riverside County, we foreclosed on 61,588 families. And in 2011, we only sold 37,000 homes. 3 years after you have a foreclosure on your record, you can get an FHA loan. So what is about to hit the market is a 165% of an annual volume on top of normal demand. That's unprecedented. They might not know it, but guess what? When you say $500 a month, you're probably going to figure that out. And that's one thing I told this foreclosure group I was part of for the city. I said, instead of trying to have classes telling people how to stay in properties, tell them that there's a lot of their friends that already can buy something. They've been foreclosed on 3 years ago. And so this is unprecedented. So, you know, you have normal demand, and all of a sudden you go and add 165% of an annual volume on top of it. And then in 2010, we only foreclosed on this many people. So in 2013, you're going to have 65% or something like that of an annual volume on top of that. Again and again, unprecedented. So do you lack demand if Wall Street disappears? Not a chance. You have your people that were foreclosed on before, and oddly enough, you don't need any jobs to be created. See, we're all thinking, well, that can't happen because of unemployment being high. Oh yeah, it can, because their payment is so stinking low. They don't need it to even raise. What percentage of, we have lenders in here, if I get a $100 raise a week, what does that translate in my ability, how much of that can be applied to a payment of real estate? About 28 bucks? Is that about right? 28%? Or more, depends. That's front end. Okay, so $35. So you multiply, I can have a $140 more payment. What's the difference, though, having an interest rate of 3.25 instead of having it be 5.5? You get 100% of that difference. So this 3.25% interest that's unprecedented is really creating affordability that's unprecedented. And I don't care if two people work at McDonald's and do something like, you know, it's easier to qualify as far as the numbers. Now, lenders are making it difficult still. A lot of what's about to happen is you're going to have them become unafraid of having to buy back loans forever. That's one of the big sticking points, is they're afraid that if they write a loan in 2012, in 2019 something could go wrong and they have to buy that at par. That's probably going to get fixed to where they're not afraid of that, but only for a 3-year period. And the day that that happens, you will have a very different loan environment. You already have a different appraisal environment. So once again, as we are selling properties, we've noticed that the appraisals are now becoming our sale price much more often. And so that's been a change. In San Bernardino, the numbers are even bigger. So people that have bought in San Bernardino County, they foreclosed on people very aggressively. And you know, you think, oh, that's a big negative. Well, inadvertently, they've supplied this huge pile of buyers going forward and got into the marketplace when everybody said, let's make inventory disappear. And see, that's what the combination of these two. Now, you've got to understand that this is not an across-the-board demand. Most of the demand from the private sector is going to be in this FHA loan, whatever the loan is for FHA in your area. The loan limits, okay? In Riverside, it's $500,000. By the way, do you know what the FHA loan limit was the last time California had a 340 median price? 160. Think about that. FHA loan limit in Riverside is $500,000. The last time we were at median price, FHA was less than half of the median price. Now it's way over the median price. If that program disappears, or they ever adjust that down, game over. That's a game changer for sure. So FHA loan being in place at this number is very significant because it's the loan that these people can get. They can't get Fannie Mae's loans. So this only works if that loan program stays in effect. The 3.5%. And you know what the loan balance is that you can get in an Orange County fourplex? FHA? $1.4 million. 3.5% down? Yep. I mean, that's unbelievable. Think you ought to buy a fourplex? Yeah, probably. I do. I think so. Anyway, already talked about that, new short sale. So where's the inventory going to come from? And this is where I started thinking, okay, I really do believe the The demand is going to be there. So is it going to come from REOs? Not according to the biggest REO agents in California. Private owners with equity? See, we're coming off of unprecedented negative equity. So you still have 30% of people with negative equity, 30% in California, but some of the counties have 45%. So the pool that you're drawing from to pop up properties for sale is hamstrung by 30 to 45%. That it's not going to come out in droves. As prices go up, it'll come out, but it's not going to come out as many as it used to. Short sales, okay. What's interesting about a short sale participant is something's going to change in their life once they agree to a short sale. Let's assume they haven't made a payment in 2 years. And before the radio interview, Lance Martin went door to door and knocked on 10 people's door whose trustee sale was scheduled the next week. So they were obviously behind in payments. And he said, I can get you money if you cooperate with a short sale. And we can stop the foreclosure in place. And he's very good at the door. He got to 6 people, none of which were interested in the slightest, because if in fact they made an agreement, what would happen the month after? They'd have a payment. Well, why mess up a good thing? So they're not interested in a payment, and so it's not easy to get people that are in the target area of you should do a short sale to say, yeah, I should. They don't think so because they have had this sale date how many times? We've taught them that's meaningless. It's going to get extended. You don't have to worry. And it's going to go on and on. So the inventory is not always easy to get in a short sale. And when you do make a short sale, just put yourself, again, most of us just are real practical. And if we use that strength, we make the right decisions. You and your wife are shopping for a property. I can just imagine me taking Marcia to a short sale and we make an offer. And I say, oh, wow, they've put our offer, they've submitted our offer. And we wait 4.5 months. And the answer is no. And then the next day I say, oh, honey, I've made an offer on another property. You know how excited she's going to be? None. Like, forget that. Don't even do that. So you only go on that ride one time. So the short sale inventory that's in the MLS, we don't even count as competition. It's like, who cares? It's really not, it's almost like it's maybe for sale. And can they change, can the lender change their price right up to the day of closing? Yeah, isn't that amazing? So let's make a deal, let's get a loan doc, and then go, we forgot, it's 30 grand more. Okay. Investor flips. Okay, well, a lot of people in this room have found deals that were marginally okay for flips, but much better for cash flow. And so more and more, our loan business started to be the 9.9% program in the 8-year. And so a lot of properties that were fixed and resold stopped being sold. They became held. New construction, 17 new houses in Riverside in a quarter. Come on, there's no way that's going to meet demand. What's interesting about the discounts that are going on, trustee sales, how many of you buy at trustee sales? Okay, so this game has changed. If you did it 10 years ago, you were chasing properties with, let's say, natural equity. So when you had a trustee sale, usually they had 30% equity, and you had the 3-month plus, 21 days to go have them get a loan or whatever. But you knew it was coming, and you could tell that it had equity, and you could do all your research. Now the game has changed just slightly. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, 50 houses that before looked like they were over encumbered have a lower bid. Now they make sense. So you're going from a 600 grand loan, and at 801 they say, okay, we'll take 340 for the house. All of a sudden now it's in play, and you do all the work you have to for a trustee sale. You have to do title work and appraisal. You have to physically inspect the property if you can, and you have to see who's there. Do they have a lease? Is it an owner-occupant? All the stuff. Are they nice? And you have to do 50 of them. And while you're doing those 50, another 50 happen too. Okay? And you basically have to buy these properties sight unseen with a cashier's check with no title insurance. And for that, guess what the discount is right now? It's 8%. We sell properties, right? What's the closing cost normally at the end of a transaction? It's 10. You could literally go next door and say, guess what? I'll give you 90%. That wouldn't cost them a dime net. And you'd be buying better than the industry buys at trustee sale. Is that crazy or what? Why? Because you have a participant called a hedge fund now that's buying under different rules. They don't care what it appraises for. They care what it caps at. See, that's a different thing. Now, that's not on your appraisal form. Is this comp created because of this way to look at it, that there were other comps, or that it's a cap rate that you desire? And so that game has changed, and it's made it very interesting. So what used to go back to the bank now gets bought at trustee sale and not resold a lot of the time. What used to go to trustee sale now gets sold in bulk or renegotiated via loan mod, and it's not sold. What used to go to trustee sale now gets sold via short sale. Instead of foreclosing quickly, the lender continues to be in no hurry. 40% or more of the foreclosure is 2 years old. And with these big companies in play, and there's probably half a dozen of them, and this is the inventory they're after. Single-family home, if it's been in the MLS for less than 270 days, I've not quite figured out why that is. 1,000 to 4,000 square feet, built in 1970 or newer, 2 to 5 bedrooms, 2 to 4 bath. In counties like Riverside, that's about all the houses there are. Okay? So you have an interesting, again, where's the price increase most likely to happen? In the sweet spot of the inventory that these guys are chasing with a checkbook, and in the sweet spot of the people that are reemerging as buyers with an FHA loan. Those two worlds collide, you have nothing for sale. Okay? And that's pretty neat. Now, does that mean that the $900,000 house in Corona might have trouble going up at the same pace? Uh-huh. And you have to understand the difference. Okay? So this is kind of a selective comeback. Where are these big companies looking? First of all, they checked with everybody that had a lot of properties. So you were offered money for yours. We were offered money for mine. I'm sure Mike was offered. If you have a lot of properties, you were offered cash. I don't like them. I'll be quite honest with you. This is just my personal bent. I will not assist them in any way.
How do you really feel?
Partly they're just an arrogant group. Okay? They think that they're better. They really do. And I was told, and in the nicest way possible, I was told that I really feel sorry for your company. I said, why is that? He said, there's no way your company will survive with us in the marketplace. I said, really? I said, your only skill is you have the use of other people's money and you don't care how you spend it. I said, you know what? When you call my phone number 5 years from now, I'll pick it up. See, they irritated me. See, if I get irritated, it's really good. I told Greg we will not sell one of our properties to any of these hedge funds. So we get offers from them for all cash, which we would be able to make more money. We do not go into escrow with them. Everything we sell is to an owner-occupant, and we use the same team of people that got us here. Just like what you do when you list properties like 3 years after you own it and the guy's retired. You know, you shake them out of retirement and say, I want to list the house. See, that's smart, but the same thing happens along the way. We have escrow people that we do a lot of volume with. If we said, well, we're selling all our houses to a hedge fund, they might go out of business. I just don't think that's right. So I'm not interested. And I just am not interested in helping them. And we've met with them. So when I meet with these people, it's really, honestly, a little bit of a keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I'm very interested to know a couple of things. When is their exit date? Because what if they buy so many properties that when they exit, it actually affects the market? That'd be nice to know their game plan. Okay? And Rick Sharga from Carrington was on the panel this year, and he was a hoot, wasn't he? That was great. And he was very generous with his information, and Carrington's actually really a great company. And we were invited to Carrington to do all of those things. As a matter of fact, we were invited to get all of you together as a group and sell them all of our stuff. Okay? And I passed because I didn't think it was right. Yes?
Blackstone had, they came out.
Met with them too.
And they said, we're going to be buying properties for 2 to 3 years. We're going to buy, we got billions and blah, 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 right? They think price is going to go up. Now, why would they come on TV? Why would they do a news release and say, we think price is going to go up for the next 2 to 3 years and we're buying a shitload of it? Why would they do that?
Why would they say that?
Yeah, I wouldn't tell them.
What, you wouldn't tell anybody? I don't know, maybe the people that have stuff for sale would call them. You know, what's been interesting is they haven't placed their money. They don't have the skill that we do. So, you know, I've thought really all year long that our loan business would probably be hurt by their presence and by the shortage of inventory. And our loan business has been fantastic all year because guess what? We have street smart skills. We know how to find stuff. They know how to look in the MLS. Now, one of the ways they did it, and this was kind of funny, they go to a tax sale. Well, tax sale, have you ever been to a tax sale? I mean, you look at 100 properties, and 99 of them are brought current in the last minute. So if you have $1 billion of other people's money, it's more efficient not to look at the properties, just to buy them. And we know that in 2 cases, they bought properties that were no longer there. They were burnt. But, you know, if you buy 1,000 properties, it doesn't really matter. Yes?
If I may just address this question for 1 second. There's one thing that they're very conscious of all the time, and that's their PR. So on the one hand, they have to buy properties consistently because they have all this money, but they never stop trying to attract capital. So they have to, in essence, spend money on PR, not necessarily for any other reason except to say, hey, look how smart we are. We're going to take your money and we're putting it into homes that are going to continue to increase in price. They never see that as a conflict of interest for them. They see it as part and parcel of their market.
One thing that you have to respect that they're market makers. Have they made prices go up in Phoenix? Yes. They've made prices go up everywhere they've touched them. Are they going to make rents go down? Yes. They're market makers in that. So let's say they're better at writing checks than they are at managing properties, which is true. Well, you could have them impact rents in markets that they're heavy in, okay? Will they affect when they go, when they leave, when they put 1,000 homes for sale in Paris and, you know, yeah, they could. So you have to be aware of these people. They're in our marketplace, unprecedented, first time, okay? So, but this is what's going to happen. You're going to start having this kind of word go out, prices up, you know, you've already, Case-Shiller up. That's going to be nothing compared to a year from now. So we just had Leslie Appleton-Young speak, and her percentage prediction for next year on median price is like 2%. I think it's more like 20. I really do. I think this is going to be very aggressive because there's nothing for sale. So the question is, where's the inventory going to come from? It's not. You're going to have 6 and 8 months of demand hovering over 1.5 months of supply all of next year. And what happens is when mom and pop shop for a house and you have a realtor show you a house every day for 30 days and you make an offer and get nothing, on the 31st day, the wife goes to the husband, I want a house. Am I making this clear? And so the guy cringes and offers $235 for a $200,000 listing and magically is the winner. And it closes and it's a comp. And the next buyer has nothing for sale, and all of a sudden the appraiser can prove $235, but the next seller says, I think I'll ask $250. And off you go. Not in little chunks, because it doesn't translate to monthly money that matters for the first time. Okay? Big, big deal. Okay, now, there are other ramifications. When you have price increases, it encourages owners with negative equity to keep your payment going. So anybody that's current now is going to stay current once this all starts happening because it's like, oh, I'm actually going to get rewarded. So that's not going to be a problem. As a matter of fact, we're really worried about the upside-down people. You have a 24% price increase in California. You've solved 1/2 of the shadow inventory in California. Okay, we translated, that's why I had Bill Tan do it, that you could have a $120,000 price increase to get to rental value, 20% price increase on a 340 median price is $68,000. Very doable stuff. Okay, you add to the number of move-up buyers. So just like the lady in our office, she's a move-up buyer. She got $80,000 of equity. She could buy the next level house. It adds to the interest in first-time buyers. That word gets out, people start getting off the sidelines. Eventually, prices rise to the point of profitable construction. So when that happens, these guys that have been on the sidelines as builders going, holy mackerel, this actually pencils now. And they start building on these existing lots. And eventually they need to carve new ones, because we don't have that many lots that are already carved. And it's, that's why I'm interested in buying those existing lots, because before it's obvious that they pencil, because I think they're going to pencil real fast. Now, what's interesting when you have a price increase, this is how a builder thinks. Let's say in Hesperia, you got $125,000 retail value house that's 1,300 square feet. And let's say the guy could actually construct that, pay for permits, and he'd pay $5,000 for the dirt. So let's say all those numbers worked hypothetically. And let's say now the prices go to $175,000. The builder, if he builds the 125 house, wants to make 10% or $12,500. The builder at $175,000 wants to make exactly the same percentage. What's that number? $17,500. The price changed $50,000, and the builder will do it for $5,000. Who got bonus the $45,000? The lot owner. That lot went from $5,000 to $50,000 and makes more sense for the builder at $50,000 than it did at $5,000. That's pretty cool. Crazy good for if you can buy a lot of lots. Now, well, I'll let you know. We just did 500 offers. Now, we did offers on the first mailer. So we didn't say, hi, we buy lots. We said, hi, you have a lot that doesn't pencil. We'll prove it to you. And is it timed perfectly? Yeah, their tax bill is due in a little while. And they probably don't want to pay that. And we think that's probably true. And so we would like to take that off their hands prior to that event. And then once I have comps, then I can do a mailer to the other 1,200 lots in the area, and now I can show them our last 20 purchases. I know you paid $80,000 for your lot, but all of the comps say it's worth $5,000. So do you want to pay it for another weed abatement and another tax, or do you want to sell? That is, see, now you have the burden of proof. There's a lot of power in that. Okay? Yes. Yeah, you can become the market maker. Absolutely. Yes.
I was going to ask, are you talking solely about infill lots?
Yes.
Or do you buy a big parcel?
No, because see, if you buy a big parcel, you haven't saved the cost. You have to do the infrastructure, and you're going to be upside down. That's why no one's doing the subdivision. They can't pencil it. Okay? So if you can buy a lot that's at $5,000, but you know it costs $50,000 or $60,000 to replace it from scratch, that's a deal. Especially if you're going to need it sooner than they do. That's the nice part. If you own land, I'm not going to use a person's name, but this is a very experienced real estate investor that owns lots of homes and has oodles of monthly income, not one bit of motivation to sell anything wholesale. He had a lot he was approached on to do a loan, $20,000 lot. He was approached to do a $5,000 loan, 25% loan to value. He said, instead of doing the loan, why don't you deed me the lot? I'll give you an option to buy it back for $5,500. Give you the $5,000, and that way I don't have to foreclose if you don't pay or whatever. The guy said, okay. So he didn't come get the lot. So the guy got the lot at 25 cents on the dollar, and we were talking, and he was going to hear me speak that night, and he was complaining because he had just gotten his weed abatement letter and his tax bill. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, would you sell me that lot for $1,000? He said, in a heartbeat. Now, this is a really knowledgeable guy who has, is he a don't wanter? Yeah, because this lot doesn't make sense to own. It's everything, like it's the ugliest thing in his world. That's what lots are. And by the way, if you own land, which I do, remember those Quill Valley lots I own that aren't doing anything but holding the world together over there? I haven't gotten any mailers on that. If you've owned building lots, you haven't heard from a soul in 5 years. So any inkling that you had, like the last of the Mohicans, is long gone. So that's why I like a mailer at about this time. You know what the response rate, if I hadn't, this is why I didn't do a mailer just to get a phone call back. You know what the response rate is on a mailer to dirt owners after a downturn? It's 40%. I would get 200 phone calls off of 500 mailers. I really don't want that. I want about 25 yeses. And then we'll get that. We'll just have people go, yes. So we're going to get the most motivated people, and then they're going to sit the price for us. What I really want in this area is there's 3 people that own 50 lots apiece. I want to go with evidence that what you have is worth $5,000. And maybe they're tired of it. Maybe one of those 3 people will be tired of it. And that's what I want. Okay? Now, construction, if it starts, improves employment because it's not the only category it affects. If you look at construction, biggest job loss in California, construction, but also financial activities, also manufacturing. Construction solves every job that's lost in California. Now, when you solve that, you solve migration. That's what's all about to happen, but in a way that has never happened before. You're going to price your way up because you can, because the interest rates are so cheap, until things pencil. And then because these homes are not normally put on the sideline, but they are this time, there's nothing for sale, and they're not going to be a big gob of homes for sale. You're going to have construction try to catch up, and you're going to create jobs, and you're going to create employment, and you're going to create migration, and those dominoes are permanent when we do that.
Wouldn't the numbers be lower, though, because there's no inventory, so there won't be any financial activities going on, as much construction going on?
Well, yeah, I will repeat the question. What he's saying, it's going to be slower going. Not in the beginning, because we actually have lots that are available, like there are tracks that are still sitting there, and there are scattered lots. So you will have people like us build a lot more homes than the builders will, okay? And that'll start this activity. So there's a lot of scattered lots, but there's not a lot of track lots, okay?
Just
Yeah.
one question. You're going to be,
Is this for me?
it is?
All
Are
right.
you going to be addressing anything on migration at all? Or?
Well, I think migration is going to be a result, and even more importantly this time, how about household formation? Because household formation has been stunted because of a bad recession. So you have this generation too, and like we discussed in the last report, this is a generation that's not like any other generation. They were talking themselves into, I want to be mobile. Everybody thinks they're going to be permanently mobile. They don't want to own anything. They want the flexibility to go to Atlanta if the jobs are there, whatever. And then they find the love of their life, and all of a sudden, forget that plan. Let's buy a house, okay? And California is a pretty good place to get that house, and that's all going to start to happen. You have a lot of people that are multi-generational. They're living in multi-generational situations. Is that what they want? No. You don't want to live in that back bedroom anymore. You can't wait to get out. And that's a household waiting to happen. You're going to get migration because that's what happens with construction, even if it's illegal.
You know, the reason I asked is I recently drove up to Smith River, and I went through Oregon, Grants Pass, and I visited old friends and stuff. While staying at the hotels, every hotel I stayed at has a little breakfast thing in the morning. You know, you get out there and you sit, and you know. So we got to talking, everybody, and I was mostly listening while I was eating my oatmeal. And there wasn't one morning that I didn't hear the story of someone saying, yeah, we're moving back to California, or my son came up here for a job or whatever, but that's not happening. And basically he's moving back to San Diego. And then the questions would come, well, did he lose the job? Well, no, he just didn't like it up here as much as he thought he was going to like it. But that was every morning.
Okay. And that's common. And what's interesting about, let's say you say, I don't have any construction in California, so I'm going to go to, you pick the state, and it gets to be 0 when it's in December, and you're hammering a nail, and it's not comfortable when you hit your finger. You go, if I get a chance to go back to California, I'm going to do it. Okay. Already talked about that. And by the way, this is speculation starts occurring when all this stuff happens. It's human nature. So if you think, okay, we're going to swear that off, bull. We're going to run right to the brink that we always do until a lender tells us, we know you want it, but you can't have it. And we have so many of those warning labels now that we're aware of that. And here's the real danger this time. Because of this unprecedented interest rate, if they allow those interest rates to be in place for too long, you will peg yourself to a median price that's not supportable by any other interest rate. And then if interest rates change after that, uh-oh. Because if interest rates only go up to 5.5, but you were really pegged at affordability at 3, you got a problem. You got a big hole again. Now this time it might not be as painful because your payment is going to be exactly the same that if you got a new loan at 5.5. And you could be 40% upside down. So you'll probably make that payment, But what it will prevent is upside. It'll be a long time before you crawl from that hole. Now, I hope they don't do that, but I think in the next 24 months, you're going to have a run. This is '04. We've cheated out 2001 and 2 and 3. This is '04 and '05 because nothing's for sale, and I can't see where it's coming from. So this is fun stuff. And we've almost been promised an interest rate that's going to stay there, right? Till what? End of 2015? That'll work. But there might be a lot less inventory owned in this room at the end of 2015. We might all look at that and go, thank you very much. We'll see you all later, you know. Okay, I think I'm done. We're going to do the questions. Or did I catch you by surprise?
No, you didn't catch me.
Okay.
You can have your seat back.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming, Tony.
All right. So what we'd like to do is have you guys write down some questions, okay? And we're going to start with the questions we have written, get them to Angel. She's running down the front, or the middle, excuse me. And where's Diana from the Norris group? Diana make it in the room? Or Aaron?
She might be next.
Anybody that's next
There's
door?
Diana. There you go.
Anybody that's next door that has questions too, can bring them in here. We're trying to do it this way so it's more organized. We appreciate it. First of all, I made some notes, and I just want to go over some notes that I was taking during your talk.
Be gentle. I'm really nervous.
Yeah, I can see that. You're really not on your game right now. You know, we talked a little bit at dinner beforehand, and you used the word more than once, unprecedented.
Yeah.
Let's get into that a minute. This is what was making you so, I'm going to use the word giddy. You had a big smile on your face when you were even saying it.
Well, when you do research, you have very few times where you reach an aha moment. And for me, it was realizing that demand was real. Okay?
Right.
So all those people that were foreclosed on, you know, we looked at that as being the big, that was what drove everything down. And now you're adding that at the perfect time when there's nothing for sale. And so that was, for me, proof that this had legs. That I knew that those people would want in because it saves monthly money. I felt like the lending world couldn't Here's what's going to happen. I know FHA's got record losses, but it's not from the last 2 years' loans. The last 2 years' loans are the safest loans ever written, ever, in Fannie and Freddie and FHA. They're going to figure out, okay, we've already done everything we have to do. We don't need to put 20% down payments and all that stuff. So all those rules that could be implemented are probably going to get modified to be very reasonable, and they're going to figure out, okay, we don't have to stomp on this market. So this interest rate, though, is the big factor, because we're so used to thinking, well, prices can't go up 20%, or unless you're just in a full-on boom. But you can if it only means $400 a month and you don't catch up to rent. Yeah, you can. I mean, that's the math. And most of us in this audience would make that decision. 50 grand from now, 100 grand from now, we would still make the decision, we better get in.
And you said in 2010, it was the $8,000 tax rebate that gave us a little push.
Yeah, but once again, when I looked at that, I knew it was nonsense. But then that's what I really thought about this one. I looked at it and went, this is nonsense, except for it's across the board, because we've got properties for sale in Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, and all of a sudden, it's all happening, and you realize, okay, I got to get to the bottom of this.
Now, what I took from this, too, and I've been to lots of your training, as I'm sure most people in the room have, you've used the term animal spirits and your moodometer.
Yeah,
and
well, that's an interesting combination, is that the moodometer is still below any other year, and we've gone from 245 to 340, and we're still lower than we were in 96. So as bad as real estate did from 1990 to 96, the payment that's emerging right now at 340 is still below that ratio. And we've gone up 100 grand, courtesy of the interest rate. So when you go from 340 to 425, you'll still be way under any peak year by a long shot.
Right, and my thing is when this catches up, and for those of you that haven't heard, the moodometer is just a way of tracking people's moods that the Norris Group came up with how they feel about real estate.
It's a willingness. What percentage of your median income will you direct toward to a real estate payment? And when you're in peak markets, you're always over 50% to 60%. Now, that doesn't mean that people are actually getting qualified with 50 and 60. It doesn't calculate all the money they bring into the deal, but it's a consistent number that when you're in 1989 and 2005 and 6, all those peak years, you have that number exceed 50%, and now we're at 25 or less.
And there was one other thing we talked about a little before at dinner was, okay, so 1988, 2004, and 2012, the low inventory numbers are actually lining up.
Yes. And those were ferocious years of increases.
And where were the interest rates then? That's another... We don't have an outlet this time. If we run up like we just listened to you say, I mean, I heard you say this, and I just wanted to make sure, 1,000% increase within 24 months on building lots.
Yes.
Do you guys catch that?
Because when we have you've got something that doesn't pencil. We actually did a trial mailer, just literally 10 pieces of mail Greg did, and I got one of the phone calls, and I heard what the guy had. And what he had was a piece of land. So he told me a story, and I said, to be honest with you, I can't pencil any value in what you own. And then I was quiet. And then he said, yeah, I know. So he knew he had something completely worthless. I said, are you tired of mowing the weeds and paying the taxes? He said, yeah, very. See, that's a guy that's primed for an option, or he just wants out, but he doesn't have anything, okay? So that's why existing building lots that you can make a quick decision on, that's part of what I like too, is I have the ability to build on it, or I have the ability to sell it very quickly. I want to be able to have that nimbleness in case, what if FHA says, okay, at the end of 2014, we're going to revert to the FHA loan balance to 350 in your area. Okay, that's meaningful. I have the right inventory to exit. I wouldn't have the right inventory if I was carving up 10 acres trying to make a bunch of lots. That would be a problem, okay?
And just to give people here who may not see the significance of this, because I'm seeing it, and by the way, how many of you are excited to hear this stuff? Raise your hand. Okay, it's a market changer. Would you agree with that? And the reason I say this is what we hear from, and you mentioned, I'm not trying to pick on her, but you mentioned Leslie Appleton Young, the economist for NAR, right, or CAR.
Which I like her, by the way. I really do.
No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her, but she and there's other people like her that are predicting little,
like 1 or 2%,
to no increases for a decade. When we hear that, and we're going to hear that from people.
I don't know that she participated in that, but you are hearing it from certainly.
There are some people out there that are saying this, and that's going to start coming out more. You said something very interesting, and I really wanted to hone in on this. They don't own property.
Yeah, they're not seeing a market change right in front of their eyes. And see, that's the value of being in the marketplace when you're an instructor, is that you're not playing. It's real money at risk, and you're watching this all play out right in front of you. And you know that the deal sources change, and you know that the discounts change. One of the things we had to do this year is, okay, we've got 5 multi-billion-dollar companies writing a check for everything in sight, but they buy a very specific type of inventory. We had to chart everything they bought and buy around that inventory. So we've made tremendous profits on stuff that they don't want. So that's what we had to go to, okay? Mm-hmm. And that was, if we didn't know how to do that, we would be trying to buy something where they're trying to get a cap rate and we're trying to get a profit. Two different worlds.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that from the very first time I met you, you had a very simple message. I'm trying to figure out what to do with my dough. That came from your mouth.
Right.
So that if you're willing to put yourself and your future and your company and the people that depend on you at risk, you don't do this without a lot of preparation. Those that know you know this.
Yeah, and I mean, we're making offers on the lots because I want to own those lots.
Right.
I want to have either a running start at a profit, just like Rosamond. When we bought Rosamond, we paid $3,000 for those lots. Yeah. At the peak of the market, we could have sold those lots for $100,000, 30 times, 3,000% more than we bought them for.
Yeah.
We built the houses instead, but we set that profit up when no one wanted those lots.
All right. I'm going to start with some questions now,
Okay.
Bruce, from people. What do you predict will happen to California property taxes in the next few years?
I think Prop 13 will probably be left alone, would be my guess. You might have a change in some facets of it. And let me ask this question, because that was the question that you asked. Is that something that has to be up for popular vote, or can that be dictated by a Congress that's controlled by a higher percentage? Just Congress? Okay. One of the problems is, okay, the people that would do that are Democrat, and the target would be older people that own their homes free and clear. That's pretty much a conflict, because that would be the target audience that would get hurt. So the person that lives in Newport Beach that has an $800 tax bill next to somebody that has a $10,000 tax bill, when you take her tax bill and make it 10 grand, she becomes homeless. That's going to hit the news media just like foreclosures would. That's the pretty bad press. I doubt they'll touch that. They might say people that own commercial buildings or whatever, there might be some ways. There's some low-hanging fruit that probably will be taken. I think, with these interest rates, I don't think any of it matters. Your standard deduction on a tax return for a couple, what is it, 12 grand? At 3.25% interest, you have to owe 400 grand before you even get $1 of it deductible. The rest of it's already deductible. So if they took away the mortgage deduction, I don't think it mattered nearly as much as you think. It's an emotional impact, but dollars would affect how many people owe 400 grand on their house. Your median price is 340, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Probably more likely to claw at it in these additional taxes they're trying to tack on for other things like health care and whatnot on transfer and in income.
What's interesting is, especially if you try, let's say, capital gains, and this is one of the things they had to study. There was a capital gains year that actually was equal to the tax rate. Okay? Well, did they collect more capital gains? No. Why? They didn't sell. It was an option. You didn't have to sell.
They opted out.
Yeah, so why? So that was supposed to be a revenue-generating event? No, it wasn't. As a matter of fact, the percentage of tax revenue that came from capital gains never again got to the year before they made that change, ever. So whenever they played with that, people that owned that stuff just decided, we won't do that. Or we'll change what we own, because you get 1031 exchange real estate. So they just changed maybe what they bought.
With 3% loans and the affordability from that, what do you see happening with our rental inventory? They say, in the last 2 months, I've lost 3 tenants to these 3%
ownership.
loans.
Yeah, to ownership. That's right. You can expect more of that. And so you're going to get appreciation and vacancies. Oh, well. I think you can live with that.
Will the rates go up? Will the rental rates trend up, though?
No, rental rates will not trend up. They will probably trend down, because you're going to have a lot of people want to go back into ownership. They're not going to disappear off the face of the earth. There are areas that will get more damage than other areas. Orange County, close to job centers, maybe even be stronger. One of the things that happens when you make skewed decisions, like in 2004 and 5, you convince yourself that you'll buy a $900,000 house when you make $3 grand a month, and you'll drive 70 miles each way from your house to go to work, because that's the mindset you're in. And then in 2011, you're going, I don't want to pay more than 25% of my income, and I don't want to drive more than 12 miles. And then you gradually grow from there. Okay, so as euphoria grows, all of that expands. So the reason I said that is, you're in Hesperia, if you're in Rosamond, Lancaster, those areas that, Bakersfield, that only do really, really well price-wise toward the end of a boom, don't have work centers, they can get damaged in rents before a Orange County or,
We lost. We back on?
Okay, I don't know. Am I on?
Yeah.
He didn't hit
I
anything.
didn't hit anything. I was just sitting there. I might have gone dead on a battery.
You're just too powerful and just shorted out the Energizer. We'll do a quick swap. Hey, again, another big hand for our audiovisual guys. Because I've got to tell you, you might have been in the overflow room. And by the way, those of you that were in the overflow room, you're going to get a free admission next year. It's the least we can do for you. We apologize for that. So thanks for sticking it out with us. But make sure we get your name and email address, okay?
Okay. Sounds like we're on again. Good. Thank you.
You can just put it up here. So this is probably, I like this question because it's to the point. What should we be doing now? Yeah, it's a big one.
Well, the one thing that I think you have to understand is that you're going to have to make a transition to talk to human beings. Yeah, and so it's not going to be...
Shocking.
Yeah, you're not going to make a bunch of offers in the MLS and get as many properties as you will if you end up thinking expansion of structures. So we're back to the let's make the 2-1 into a 3-2. Let's buy a building lot and construct a house. You know, let's do those things where we can control our own destiny. More and more people are going to do mailers directly to owners of rental properties. Maybe a lot of them don't have a lot of equity this time because I hear the results of that's not so good. So I know the target that we're after is where no one else is looking, and that's really what I try to understand, and that's the vacant building lots right now. They're not really getting a lot of attention. You know, one of the things that people made a big mistake on was, I'm going to wait until it hits bottom. You're $100,000 off of bottom already. You probably didn't know it happened. They didn't ring a bell. But I can tell you, if you were in 2003 thinking you missed the boat, you were probably really happy you bought what you did and rode through 2005. That's about what we're about to experience.
Are you concerned that a spike in interest rates will stop this upward momentum in its tracks?
What I like about charts is all you have to do is go backwards and have that answer. So the all-time rise in interest rates was between 1974 and 1980. Interest rates went from 7.5 to 17, and prices tripled because there was still affordability built in to even until you got to that ridiculous interest rate. What happens when you have interest rates go up? So let's just play this out. You and your wife go shopping for a house, and you hesitate because you're cheap. And the builder's got a house for sale for $199.5, and interest rates are 3.25, and you don't go back for 3 months, and now it's $229 or whatever I just said. In other words, $30,000 more, but interest rates are now 4. You have a twin motivator going on. Wow, we are paying more, and we're paying more. And when would you like that pain to stop? Like now. And so you start making really quick decisions to get in. And so that interest rate doesn't hurt, it actually helps. And I remember reading on all this research when this was National Association of Realtors, or no, it was CAR, California Association of Realtors in 1988. They were astonished that they were having price increases that they were, and in let's say in 1979, the same thing happened. Only interest rates were 13.5%. And I remember CAR saying, we can't believe we had a year that went up 20% with interest rates over 12. And it was because it was still affordable. And as long as the lender said yes to you, you didn't really care what the number was. You wanted in. Because you thought, well, I'll never get in if I don't get in now.
This question is, so what month should I sell all my stuff and retire, Bruce?
Tony, is that you?
He was sitting right next to me. I didn't see him scratch that one out.
Tony actually asked me that question. Was that you, Tony? Okay. You remember asking me that? I had a laugh. I knew that was you.
No answer? Everyone's waiting for your answer now.
No, there was no answer because that's not the way you do it. That's
Okay.
funny.
I heard the hedge funds are going to start releasing their inventory next year. Do you think this is going to happen?
I don't think it matters. If they do, they'll prove the point that they are not as bright as they thought they were.
This one's about appraisals. Still coming in low, under offered price. How do we get appraisers to realize that every offer is a comp? Who was that a quote from?
There's the president of Appraisal Institute, Mag Ziares. You can go to the website, and there's the recording. And that's he said that would be his position, that those were comps.
Appraisal Institute?
Appraisal Institute. The president of the Appraisal Institute, he sat in front of Congress and lobbied, so that's the right guy to say that, right? But you know what? You might just have to be patient because this is also what's going on, and this was discussed at the Nixon Library. They tried to fix the appraisal world by not having any pressure on the appraiser. So now the pressure comes from another direction. Who is it? It's the lender. Because what? They own the management companies, and they're doing the appraisal assignments for the lowest bidder who does it the quickest. And if let's say you do an appraisal and a review appraiser comes in below you, you don't get any more assignments. That's a broken system, and it's starting to be fixed. So you're going to have that world change as well. to where the appraisal world is going to reflect a comp. I mean, that's what's happening, is comps are happening despite the appraisal not happening. And now it's a comp, so it can happen the next time. And it'll start building momentum on itself because, again, 20 grand price increase at 3% doesn't make a lot of difference monthly. And that's unprecedented, it really is.
What is your suggestion now for investing? Buy land or real estate? That's number one.
Yes.
Yes.
Both, because one cash flows and pays your monthly bills, and that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
And one you hold, and it's going to take time, and it's going to have probably a better yield, but you don't want all your eggs in that basket. And you know what? Before you do any of it, please know what you're doing. You don't play in. I own still 5 lots in Quail Valley. They don't perk. It was really important to know the definition of perk
Right.
before I bought the Quail Valley lots. And actually, I make fun of myself. I actually did know what the word was. I actually went to the city of Quail Valley. A guy with the map actually went with me, and all of those lots were shown to perk when I bought them. Then they changed the rules. Now they don't perk. So now I have just like lawn space for my next door neighbor.
Moonscape, rocket landings.
I don't even know, what's that thing that somebody moves their stuff on your land and now they own it? That could have
Adverse.
happened to all of them, I don't know. Adverse possession may have occurred. Some swing set may be permanently encased in my lot. I don't know. As you can tell, I'm not too concerned about it.
You're saying it.
If I tell you what, if somebody, I know I'm going to get this offer now, but a couple years ago, somebody had sent me an offer for $1,000 apiece. It's all yours, pal.
You could be the Redneck Riviera. Is that what you're
That's
saying
right.
at this point?
You have no idea.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about buying commercial real estate? Do you think it will go up at the same rate as residential?
No. I think the damage is still going to happen to that product because you have a lot of loans that are coming due in the next 3 or 4 years. So many billions of dollars. So I'll give you an example. We just made an offer on the building next to ours. So we bought the building that we occupy. Somebody paid $950 for it. We bought it for $319. And the building next door had a $3.6 million loan on it. It went up for sale for $1.4. We offered $920. And I think they said they countered it with 20 grand off, and I laughed. I said, I'll just be patient because I don't think you're going to see anybody else. So it's just the wrong inventory to be aggressive on unless you have very big pockets because you're not going to construct that for 920 grand, that's for sure. But you may take a long time to rent it too. It really could. So you can't put all your eggs in that basket unless you can write a check.
So this one says, how many years do you think it will take before price peaks then? How many years will they go up before they peak?
It's not a length of time, it's a series of charts. So anytime you pick a year, you don't understand the process. What if we have a recession because we hit the fiscal cliff and we get a 2% interest rate and California has all these buyers anyway and nothing for sale? Could you go to 500 grand at 2%? Yeah. Could you get there quick? Yep. I have no idea how fast. I just know when it ends is a series of charts. Okay? And we really do know those charts. So we'll have plenty of warning. We really will.
Do you see more loans opening up for investors?
No. Well, you know what? Tony's found a nice niche. I mean, the local banks, yeah, they're doing it. Yeah, absolutely. But do I think Freddie and Fannie are going to step up with 25 loans? There's been some discussion, but I just think there was a report recently, it was now within a year, where they found out that investors actually bought a lot more of the properties in 05 and 06 than they previously thought, and they had lied on their applications that they were in fact going to live in it. And a lot of that was new homes, because the builder wouldn't sell it to you, right, unless you said, hey, I'm going to live in it. And so you sometimes lied through your teeth and didn't live in it, and then they literally went backwards, and what they thought was 25% participation was 50. And so they now have these reports that are done by the Fed that basically said the investors are responsible for a lot more. And we actually tried to interview the guy that did that report because I wanted to clarify the word investor and speculator and have him understand clearly that who is buying today is an investor who is buying in '05 and '06 was a speculator.
This one goes back to what I think you just said about your charts. What signs will you look for as a signal to sell?
Well, the one I'll talk about is affordability. That's a reliable one. Just it's pretty repetitive. You know, you get in this, as a state, you get in the high teens, it's about over. Another chart, I mean, there's a whole series of charts, but interestingly enough, used inventory, existing inventory's median price exceeds new inventory's price. Because builders always undershoot how many homes are going to be bought, and so all the demand lights on existing inventory, and actually the chart heads over it. That's the sign you're done, and there's more than that. So, you know, you see 4 charts, let's say, that you know means the end. Don't think, this time it's probably different, I'll hang on. No, probably not.
Would you suggest build and hold assisted living facilities, and if so, where?
Not my expertise, so I can't answer it. I don't know the answer to it.
Okay. Coach signed this one. Okay, Coach. When do you think rates will go up? In 1980, we went from 11% to 14% in just 6 weeks. And what about the loss of the purchasing power then for the dollar if we have hyperinflation?
You know, I think, honestly, we're probably going to have a very strange, like, we're not going to, I've got to write a newsletter, and it's about the fiscal cliff. Okay. Can we deal with the fiscal cliff in the way we should? No, because we have still a crummy economy. So I think you're going to have interest rates artificially low for an extended period of time, which is going to allow these prices to go up. I don't like the period of time after that, to be honest with you. So I think Jack Fullerton is right. There's going to be a due date, and we keep shoving it out, and the longer we shove it out, the more painful the event will be. I don't know if it's hyperinflation. I know that I would probably adjust my ownership at that time to get prepared for that type of a thing. And I'm not in the camp that it's going to be terrible, but I'll prepare myself at least for part of it. I don't know if I'll buy 1,000 pounds of wheat again, but you know, you might want to buy some hard assets, and you probably want to buy them anyway.
Can the California Assembly and Senate increase property taxes because they have a supermajority? And can they increase without a 2/3 voter approval?
Yeah, and I think we did cover that. It looks like they can. I just think the political backlash for that, they may get isolated, out of that. You might get the commercial property owners, or hopefully not the people that do what we do, rent properties. But I just really am against it, actually. I don't want the person that worked hard all their life, owns a home free and clear, to be displaced because we need more money. We don't need more money. We need to spend more wisely the money we have. How could you have more money than the price boom kicked into the California coffers? If you didn't use that smartly, please don't tell me more revenue is the answer. It's nonsense.
Does this apply to Los Angeles County?
There are parts of it does, but in other words, you still need the intersection of demand. So you have all these people foreclosed on within the FHA loan limit. So yes, that is a target area. You don't have the participation so much of the hedge funds in LA, but you use some. Mm-hmm. But it's really predominantly driven by that group that was foreclosed on and the excess demand. So the inventory levels in LA are just like Riverside. It's a month.
And what are the marketing channels we should be doing right now for deals, for a buy-sell business?
Short sales, that's going to be good for the duration of, let's say, a couple years. And outside of that, you're probably going to talk to a human being that has something. And subject twos. We haven't talked about that. Subject twos galore, because you've got all these interest rate loans, and you've got 30% of your population upside down, and they're going to be popping their heads up, but maybe have motivation before they have equity. So they may need to get out and just want to deed you the property. So, you know, if you've never bought subject to, it really is just a matter of you getting trusted with the idea that you're going to make a payment even though the loan's not in your name. And if you give them any kind of money, you know, it wouldn't make sense to give them money and not make the payment. So at some point, on a person's wish list, if they're in that situation, they want somebody to give them money, and then you go, well, you don't really have any equity. Okay, well, then can I assume my loan? No, I really can't do that because investors don't even qualify for taking these loans over.
And you owe more than it's worth.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you've ever missed a payment and I assume it adopted on my credit. So the bottom line is all that's on the wish list. What has to happen is you don't want to make the next payment, and I can make that happen. I can take over the loan, make the next payment, and if that's on the have-to list, the wish list isn't going to happen, but the have-to list can. And that's when you get a yes answer. And if you get, by the way, we never usually build momentum, but if you get a yes answer and it's working out, get a letter from that person that, in fact, they did exactly what they said, and build yourself a little portfolio of letters that say, you know what, this is a credible person, you can do this transaction, and they'll be making the payment. Because they'll call some of these people and go, okay.
When would you do that deal?
Oh, I'd do it yesterday.
No, I know.
Right now.
Yeah.
Give me an example of when you do a substitute deal.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay,
When?
give me an example of when I would do one.
Yeah, you said they're underwater, so is there a certain percentage?
Oh, I say, no, you know what, I'm not in a big hurry. I think when they're 90% loan to value to 100% loan to value would be my sweet spot. But you know what? When you're going to escalate at what I think we're going to escalate at, you'd probably go, shoot, wish I'd have done that other one, because you're going to have, you're going to have a profit and you're going to have a cash flow too. See, that's the nice thing about these interest rates, is that they're probably going to create a cash flow. And I know that's an itch that you guys have, and you pay attention. It's almost like a tranche of value. It's really interesting if you buy leased land for the first time. It's a very weird concept that you can have loans on the same address with different levels of ownership interest. So you can have a master lease, and you can borrow $20 million on the whole project. Then you can have a sublease, and you can get a construction loan to build a house on your subleasehold interest. And then you have a fee simple interest underneath the whole thing that could be $100 million. One of the fun things in a market is trying to explain somebody that's buying a lot from you for 80 grand why there's $110 million owed on it. Yeah, it's not your part of the land. Don't worry about that. I actually had to explain that. That's a tough explanation.
Would you suggest being an investor in real estate investment trusts or REITs?
Oh, no, my goodness. I'm sorry. It's just you want to learn how to do this for yourself and make your own decisions, because it looks to me like the person they're mostly interested in is themselves. So I'm afraid I would not want to give them my money and hope that they were going to treat it as well as I would. So I would learn how to do this yourself.
This one says, in planning my retirement for 2015 to 2020 timeframe, my question is, how is your health, Bruce?
How is my health? I hope to be around, but I suspect you probably will have an exit. You probably will have an exit before we normally do. I would think that what was be like 2006 will be coming in 2016. That would be, we're going to have a very interesting boom this time.
So this is the last question, and somebody either came really well prepared with their own printer, or they saw you before and were prepared. We don't know which one.
I'm glad you're going to read that.
Yeah,
because
so it is, seriously, it's a pretty good little wrap-up, so that's why I saved this one for last.
Okay.
So this is how it starts. If we accept as given the following, you ready? Even though the default rate has slackened, there are still thousands of properties that are already in default foreclosure. That the banks have held back on releasing inventory, one of the strategies to help prices to increase. That the feds will keep the interest rates low for the next year at least to allow prices to increase further. People buy on the monthly payment commitment, not as much on the purchase price. And that the Bush forgiveness of the differential between loan balance to short sale approved price will disappear 1/1/13. And that tax will once again become due at normal income tax level for the forgiven amount. Okay, so that's the accepted things that this question person is asking.
which was, to me, a lot of not correct assumptions.
Do we want to take any of these apart before we continue?
Yeah. But I can't read the list.
I know.
They're going to
So
It's-
default rate is slacking. There's still thousands of properties already in default foreclosure. Do we want to?
And we showed you that they're not going to foreclose on them. They're going to do everything other than that. They're going to sell the notes in bulk. They're going to recast the loans. They're going to forgive the debt completely. Are you going to get a bunch of REOs? By the way, if you wanted those handled, if you're Fannie Mae, FHA, and you already have an infrastructure of agents that have infrastructure of knowledgeable people, why would you tell them to let them go if you're going to give them a bunch of stuff and they don't have anybody good now to handle the volume? Does that make any sense? It ain't going to happen. Okay, sorry. Next.
No, banks have held back on
They
releasing
haven't.
inventory.
They're down by 50%. Sean O'Toole from Foreclosure Radar, go to his website. He calculates every stinking one of them. They're not holding them. They're 50% down.
Feds will keep the rates low for the next year at least to allow prices to increase further because people buy on monthly payment commitment, not price.
Well, I think they're going to keep them. They could very well keep them. Bernanke said till the end of 2015.
So at least the next year. Okay, we're good. We got one. The Bush forgiveness of tax will disappear 1/1/13.
It's scheduled to, but I've talked and on the panel was the president of National Association
Right.
of Realtors. They said there's absolutely no interest in Congress to have that expire. That will be extended, they feel, with 100% certainty. So, and what he's talking about is you get debt forgiveness. If you got taxed at that, you'd have a problem. And so it just disappears and it doesn't impede you going forward with a big lien.
So here's questions then. You ready for these,
I'm ready.
everybody? Do you think, Bruce, that short sales will become a smaller percentage of the sales in contrast to the past year when they dominated the listings?
No, I think that's going to be a very healthy, it'll be probably a stable percentage or maybe even a little bit of a growth. What's going to happen is your REOs that were 25% that are now 12 will be 5. And your private sellers will be 70. And that's probably the ratio, 25, 70, and 5.
Do you think that new foreclosures may swing up when those that would have gone through a short sale decide to let the property go into foreclosure instead rather than pay the income tax burden? I think that goes back to that tax thing.
Yeah, since that's not going to happen, it's
Okay.
a question that doesn't need to be answered.
That banks will continue to let portfolios go to large investors rather than as individual listings and perhaps even accelerate this strategy.
Yeah, they're going to sell them, but they're selling them with ownership retention. So when Fannie sells 500 houses, they're not letting go 100% of the ownership. They're retaining some of the ownership, and the plan is let's rent them out
They're letting
first.
these guys participate.
That's right. They're financing them and they're participating. So they're going to net more. Fannie's going to actually net more than they would ever selling them one at a time. And yet they're getting paid for what they're worth right now because these people that are buying them in bulk are buying them at retail.
And then the last one is, other than dirt lots or building lots, what class of property do you recommend we concentrate our efforts?
FHA loan balances, wherever you are, if it's Orange County, probably 750 and under, whatever the balance is, Riverside 500 and under. That's the sweet spot of what people that were foreclosed on can get a loan, and there's going to be lots of them.
All right. I now have this yellow flyer, so this is what I told you earlier I didn't have when I was up here. This is the lab that I'm teaching. Subject to talking to sellers, negotiating, role-playing, master leasing, trust deeds, options. I think it's pretty topical stuff. If you want to join me, grab one of these flyers in the back, and we'll get you set up for January. I really appreciate you coming out, Bruce. Have you got the date set for the next boot camp where you're going to be integrating this data?
Yeah, but I think it's full. Diana, where are you?
Diana or Aaron?
I think it's got 15 spaces, and I think 14 are filled. So.
Okay, but you're going to keep, and how often? Is it every 90 days, or are you not doing
Yeah,
that?
we're going to do one a quarter because it's, we're going to have a lot of repeat people.
Okay.
And also, when you guys borrow money, you get the cost of the boot camp refunded as you do loans. Diana, I mean, you're the one that told me we had 14 already. Is that?
I have a waiting list. I'm reconfirming with some of the early signups. So if people are interested, let me know tomorrow, and I'll
And
confirm.
and what is the date of that?
29th, 30th, and 31st of January.
Okay, January 29th, 30th, 31st. If you guys haven't had a chance to go to his boot camp, I highly recommend it. It's been a little while since I was there, but I got to put on my list of things to do. And you're going to be at Bill's Tan's group in December. December 11th, if you want to see Bruce again. December 11th, go down to the Scottish Rite Center. And you got anything else you want to close up with, Bruce? Any parting shots?
No, but I've had a good time. My voice
I
is
hope
gone.
so. We got you things.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you very much,
I really
Bruce.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And we will see you back here. Just hope to God not in this room in January. So please get to the website, investorsworkshops.com. Now what we'd like to do is have everybody head out as soon